We are the One Story Podcast. We believe in the power of a story. Everyone has a story, and that story is meaningful. Your story can make a difference. Your story can inspire others. Your story is important. At the same time, ultimately, everyone's story is a part of one story, the big God story.
It's not what you said. You're not who you said you were. When are you alone? When will you come back home?
Hello. This is the One Story Podcast. My name is Drew, and I'm with my friend Isaac.
Hi.
How you doing, Isaac?
Hi.
Doing good. Yes, thank you.
Hello.
This is episode 29, and we have for you today our guest, Liz Rodriguez. She comes on to share her story, and just going to give you a little disclaimer. It is a pretty heavy story. Another great story of God's redemption and grace for us, but she does get into some pretty detailed adult content. You know, just the lifestyle she got into with gangs and drugs and alcohol, sex, and different things. We've given the disclaimer before, so there's definitely one on this episode. So use discretion if there's kids in the room.
Honestly, it hit me hard. Her story is it's
very heavy, and
just to know that someone, that people go through some of the things that she's gone through is just to know that that's out there in the world. She's
not the only one.
And to know, and you know what? And I think that's something to know, that that's what the world has to offer. God says to not be conformed by this world, but what is it?
Transform by the renewing of your mind.
Yeah. But I think the most important thing is when you live in this world, that's the stuff that,
well, it can happen.
It can't.
Obviously, come on.
Yeah.
There's different levels of.
Obviously, I'm just saying though.
Yeah.
But that's what's out there, and
it's
and that's the thing. When you subject yourself to stuff, that's where it could lead to certain things.
Open yourself up to different things and going down a path that you shouldn't be going down, and before you know it, you're in some pretty heavy stuff. And it's kind of what we hear with Liz, but we hope you enjoy it. It's definitely a great story. Isaac was talking about how it kind of reminded him of the woman at the well with Jesus, because there's a point in Liz's story that you'll hear where she kind of talks about she cries out to God, but it was in a mocking sense. She was almost mocking God, like, if you're real, then show me something. And
so in John chapter 4, it's the chapter is Jesus talks to the Samaritan woman and what it is. If you don't know the story, Jesus goes through. It's kind of it's a very, to really get in depth with the story, I've heard probably several sermons on it.
One
of my favorite stories.
It's a great story, and it's just interesting that as Jews, the Samaritans were viewed as like the lowest of the low. Like, I've heard it said about, like, in Jewish writings, like they were like lower than the dogs or something like that, to that effect, and they were like the northern part of Israel that they kind of mixed in with other gods, like, historically. And so they were just, as the Jews, the Pharisees, and they saw the Samaritans as like just low nothing. And so in the story, it's just interesting that from Jerusalem, they're traveling up back into Galilee, and Jesus has to go through Samaria.
Did he have to? Wasn't there another route, and he chose to?
No, exactly. They didn't have to go,
yeah.
And most Jews would go,
especially
would
to
go
avoid him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they go through, and it's like the middle of the day, 12 o'clock noon,
the 6th hour,
and in the desert, over there in the Middle East, it's hot, the hottest part of the day, and this woman is drawing water at the well, which would indicate that she was by herself. And normally the women would band together, and they would go in the early hours when it was cooler to go do that work. So she's there by herself. Jesus has the disciples go into town and to go get some food, and he's there, and then he engages her in conversation, which is, like, on so many levels, you wouldn't do.
Well, he's not supposed to talk to her because she's a Samaritan, and then because she's a woman.
And in those cultures, they kept their distance and didn't talk, and so he engages this conversation and asks for her to give him a drink. And then it just starts, and she's kind of like looking at him like, well, get a drink. What do you mean? You don't even have
a pail to
pail
fetch water.
to
She's like, good luck getting water.
Yeah,
you don't even
basically,
have a pail.
like, who are you? You know, this crazy guy. And then he says the one line where it says, if you knew the gift of God and who it was, or who it is who says to you, give me a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. And then what you were talking about, she kind of mocks him in a way. What does she say?
In verse 11, she says, you have nothing to draw your water with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob? And that's kind of the part where she's like who are you?
Are you greater than Jacob who gave us this
Yes.
well?
Mm-hmm.
And then Jesus answers and goes on to say, you know, whoever drinks of this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that he has, it's gonna, you know, it's living water, and you won't thirst again. And so now it starts like clicking in her head. She's like, okay, wait, who is this guy? And she says, give me this water that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw again, because she was an outcast of the town. Like she was going at a time when she shouldn't have, and she's like thinking to herself, well, now I don't have to go here anymore and kind of be ridiculed for who I am. Like, give me this living water. And then it goes on to say, or what is he asks her to call your husband.
And then
this kind of gets away from Liz's story, but it's a great story. In
this is where he reveals himself
exactly
to her.
And what does he do?
And then and then this is when the big point where he tells her. So this is in verse 26. She says, "Well,
wait, before you get there, because he tells her, go call your husband, and she says, well, I don't have a husband.
Yeah,
and he says, yeah, you said rightly, because you've had 5. Is it 5? And the one you're living with right now is not your husband. And she's like, oh, dang, this guy knows. And then she's like, are you a prophet? And it's just this little...
it builds up.
It builds up as, like, first she's thinking this guy's crazy, and then she kind of mocks him. And then it's like, okay, this guy knows exactly who I am. And then it's kind of funny. She pulls out, like, a theological question where she says, our fathers worshipped on this mountain, and you Jews say that in Jerusalem is the place where one ought to worship. It's just kind of weird, like random, like because the Samaritans and the Jews, they both had different beliefs of where they should be worshiping, kind of thing. And then he just goes on to tell her, you know, there's going to be a time where basically you're going to worship in spirit and in truth, not in a specific place. And then you can go on to, you were talking about in 26.
Oh, in 26.
Or go from 25.
Oh, yeah. So in verse 25, John chapter 4, verse 25 says, the woman said, I know that the Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. And then Jesus declared, I am the one speaking to you. I am he.
Yeah.
And that's the big bomb that's dropped on the world at that point, which is crazy because this is the first time in recorded scripture
in the Gospels that he declares that he's the Messiah himself, and he's declaring.
And
I
like how he says, "I am he," because that's
it goes back to Exodus,
where the great I am.
And it's interesting because like it's building up to this, and then she says, I know that the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he will tell us all things. So she's already thinking like, dang, is this the Messiah? He just told me everything about myself, my life. And then Jesus tells her, I who speak to you am he. And yours is a different translation, but it's just pretty powerful that God would choose to reveal himself as the Messiah to this Samaritan woman who in all accounts in that time period was nothing, and she was an outcast. She had 5 husbands before, and that's a whole nother story to get into, why that would have come. And then now she was living with a guy and she wasn't married. And so she was just the outcast of her town, and she had to go to get water at the high time of day. And God's revealing and saying, I'm
so
the
everything
Messiah.
because everything about her life was wrong. Like, everything. Yeah. About her, what she was doing, who she was to that society at that time was worthless, was unwanted. Like, it was just not, like you said, like her value was zero.
Yeah.
In that time, to everybody. And out of all people, God came to this woman and reveals her, himself to her.
He said, you are valuable, basically.
And kind of going back to like what we're doing here. In verse 39 says, many of the Samaritans from the town believed in him because the woman's testimony. You know, she went out and told everybody, come see the man who calls himself the Messiah.
Yeah, and it also talked about how it says that many more believe because of his own word.
Yeah.
Then they said to the woman, now we believe, not because of what you said, for we ourselves have heard him, and we know that this is indeed the Christ, the Savior of the world.
That's verse 42.
And that's like, yes, you know, like she told her testimony, and it brought the people to come to see Jesus, and that's what we're doing. We're sharing testimonies here, our own testimonies and our guests, to tell people like, hey guys, you know, Christ is real, Jesus is real. And then from then you experience him for yourself. And that's what they did. The town, the Samaritans there, they experienced Jesus for themselves. And that's now why they believe, not just because of what she said, because now
they open up themselves to him
and
to see it for
they
themselves.
Experienced him. And yes, we're not, you know, back in Jesus's time, he's not walking around today, but through the Holy Spirit and through the things that Christ will reach out to you, you can believe because of him, not just because of these stories that you hear on this show. And
I would just ask that. I always say at the end, you know, kind of the tag, and I'm just asking to just to ask. So if you're even if you do believe and you haven't experienced, you know, even if you do have faith in God and you haven't experienced his love yet or his presence,
or to go deeper in, open
yourself. Yeah. Ask God to reveal himself to you, you know, and he will. And in the story, you'll see where, like the woman at the well, Liz mockingly asked God to reveal himself to her, and he does.
Yeah.
So
get ready for the story. It's a wild one, and it is though. It's really heavy, and like Isaac and I just kind of sat back, and she talked, and it's hard to say much, but just, you know, where everything kind of ends up, it's a blessing. So we hope you enjoy. Liz Rodriguez. Hello. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well.
I feel like this is scripted.
Yeah.
I feel like we've done this before.
So let's put down the cue card and let's really just go with it.
Dang it.
Yeah, so we were, Liz is on the show. We got connected to her through my brother-in-law and sister. She's a fellow Freedom Houser.
Yes, I am.
And she wanted to come on and share her story, and we're excited to have her on. And she's an avid Patrick Swayze fan.
Yes.
That's what we just found out. Dirty Dancing. Yeah, so why don't we just jump right in? Okay. And
I would like to say I do like these Freedom House guests. They're coming. They're bringing heat. They're bringing heat to the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm glad you guys like us.
So the standard's pretty high right now, Liz.
Don't trip. I got this.
I like the confidence. I like it.
Right on.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's get started.
Okay. So I was about 13 years old when I first started experimenting with things. First, I just want to say that I come from a good family. I wasn't raised in any certain way, but a normal household, working dad, you know, stay-at-home mom. There's 5 children. I'm the oldest of the 5.
Oh, okay.
So I heard your podcast, so I'm not the middle child. So see,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah.
So we're gonna go ahead and have to stop.
Yeah.
Stop the recording.
Oh, I couldn't have said that.
No, that's part of the standard. You have to be middle child.
I'm done. I'm cut. Dang it.
No, so we got a first childer.
Yes, first childer. I think the oldest child, not the first childer.
You want to add ER to everything, Drew?
Freedom Houser.
First childer.
All right.
Okay. So I'm the oldest of 5.
And you grew up in
West Covina. So that's where I grew up. So again, like I said, I had a good upbringing in that sense. But for some reason, I was always drawn to, you know, that street life. I've always liked movies that portrayed that. Movies, they really caught my attention with that. So I remember just watching a movie and watching Reservoir Dogs and seeing a particular scene with Mr. White. I was watching it with my dad at that time, and I was like, Dad, that's the kind of guy I'm going to marry. I've never seen my dad so
Stuck
angry.
In the middle with you.
See? But he sent me to the room that day. Didn't let me come out for a while. But again, at that age, I started becoming really angry. I started becoming really ashamed of myself. I started feeling really worthless, and I couldn't understand why I was feeling that way. Again, I have a good upbringing. And then because I started getting really angry, I didn't know how to release my anger. So at that time, I actually started to cut myself. I would do that on areas of my body where, you know, my mom or my family couldn't see what I was doing. And I started doing that because being so angry, I didn't know how to release it at that age. I guess my mind couldn't process anything. I don't even know what even made me do that.
Sparked it?
Yeah,
or-
I don't know. I just was sitting in the bathroom one day and I was really upset and angry with myself. And again, I didn't even know why. So I grabbed something and I just cut myself. It was nothing sharp. But the release that I felt after that, I think became like an addiction for me at that moment with that.
Because
So
it did feel like you were releasing something.
it did. It felt at that moment,
Yeah.
it gave me a release at that moment.
Yeah.
It wasn't a very long release,
Yeah.
but at that very moment, it was something that I felt like, man, this is making me feel better. So again, I didn't understand why I was feeling the way I was doing it. And then I would have a lot of nightmares just about things being done to me, you know, as a kid. So this is where I started getting scared because there was particular people, person in my family that I wasn't always really comfortable with. And I just always felt like really awkward around as I was getting older, and I never knew why. So I didn't find out why until later. So I'll share that. But so this is what started happening. And then when I went to high school is when I started doing drugs. I was hanging around with gang members. I started hanging around with a lot of gang members. My first drug, I didn't do, I guess, your typical pot.
Like weed?
No,
to start
I
it
jumped straight into, at that time was speed.
off?
Now that became something that was starting to numb the anger and the pain that I had. Growing
Was
up.
there any kind of fear of
No.
drugs or anything?
I had
'cause that's
no
pretty
fear.
gnarly.
Yeah.
So you
I
got-
wouldn't even ask what it was.
You just
I
down
just
to just do
did it.
Yeah.
And I never understood why I was like that.
So did you feel like you got hooked and like you wanted?
Actually,
that?
it wasn't. No, it was just a quick release. So what I found, what I like to do was I started fighting now. And because I started fighting, that was the release that I had. I went to 4 different high schools. Each year I was kicked
Getting
out of
kicked
one.
out?
Yes. Due to my anger, due to my violence, due to always picking fights with somebody. My sophomore year, actually, I was in Glendora High School. That was one school I went to. I had gotten raped that year. So the crowd that I was hanging out with was not a good crowd.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, not that I deserve that. It's just sometimes, you know, you're not around good people. You don't really understand what you're putting yourself around. So I ditched school, went to a party, you know, house party, thought I was, you know, being cool and just doing what I was doing drugs, drinking. And at that moment, I was raped. I got dropped off back at school by that person. I didn't even know him. It was just somebody that was at that school. And that's when I can say from that moment is when the rest of my life spiraled out of control.
Yeah.
I did share this with my mom. She wanted me to go to the cops. You know, she wanted me to do all that. I started to do that. And then a fear came in me and I pulled back.
And what was the fear?
I didn't want to see him again. You know, so now I was holding on to that. And I think once that happened, that made me hate God. And that was the first time I can ever say I was brought up Catholic.
Okay.
So I was brought up Catholic. Didn't go to church every Sunday, but I did every single sacrament. And was in catechism from kindergarten to high school. Actually, my sophomore year was my last year we did our confirmation. So I was brought up knowing, you know, who God was in a surface area, what He was about. It just didn't have a relationship with Him. So when that happened to me, that honestly made me hate Him, and then made me hate myself more. So ever since then, now I was hanging out. You'd think that would have stopped me from hanging out with bad people, but it didn't. It made me feel worse. And I think because I felt so low, I just hung out with people that were low. So now my drug addiction was getting worse. And at this time now it was meth and PCP that I was doing. Just started on the weekends. Then I was selling it. Now I was ditching school even more, fighting so much. I feel bad now. My dad was always in the office being called by, you know, what I was doing, how I was acting, what I was doing to people. You know, I had people's parents put restraining orders up against me because of how I was. I was just a really angry person.
Was
And again,
the drugs, they were easily accessible? Or?
you know, unfortunately, being a girl and guys are selling it, they will give it to you for free.
Mhm.
And I think that's the problem. It's with, I hardly ever paid for it. It was
Right.
just
So
given.
It was easy to
It was very easy. Very easy to get it. And then, like I said, I started selling it. So then I started with that. So now I'm hanging around the neighborhood. Now I'm, you know, I said I'm sleeping around. Now I have, I'm cutting myself still at this time. I'm sleeping around. I don't have a good relationship with my parents. I'm doing drugs. I'm fighting. Now it becomes where I'm stealing. I'm, you know, in the car with people I shouldn't be in the car with, doing things, robbing people, doing home burglaries. This started my end of my senior year.
Who are these people you're doing this with?
Friends, just people from the neighborhood, you know.
Not people that went to school with you.
No, it was never anybody I went to school with. The most I would do with people at school would be like house parties, you know, occasional drugs, drinking. But this lifestyle that I was choosing, it was never around those from school. It was from the neighborhood where I grew up at, around there, and that's what I would be doing. And then
were they older than you?
They were older than me.
Okay.
They were older than me. Most of them were guys. I never really had too many female friends. I had some close ones in high school, but like outside of that, I didn't. I hung around with a lot of guys, you know, getting myself, like I said, into trouble. I would do a lot of things. And at this time, I didn't feel like any guilt. I never had a conscience about what I was doing. The drugs got worse. They got really bad. At 18 years old, I got pregnant. And I was about 5.5 months when I lost my daughter. And that when I got pregnant, I was super scared to tell my parents, you know, because I'm 18. But then I felt like that was going to make me better. I always wanted to be loved. And it's not that my parents didn't love me. I think it was just the things that have been done to me from that moment when I was younger on. I just wanted to be loved. And I felt when I got pregnant, like this is something now I can have. Like something's going to love me. Somebody's going to actually love me. I can love somebody back. So 5.5 months, I lost the baby. That grew me into a deeper depression. And I never been depressed, like staying in bed.
Do you mind me asking what happened?
So what happens is, it came to find out my cervix is really weak. So when the baby gets a certain weight, my body just thinks it's time to give birth when it's not time to give birth. I don't really know why granted I was 18, so this was almost 20 years ago. So it's not like how it is now, you know, where babies can be born at 5 months and be saved. And that was the hard thing because she was moving in me the whole time. I felt her heart rate was great. It was me. And then when they told me my water broke, they told me I had to push. And when I push, that she would die when she came out. So I wouldn't push. So it was pretty hectic in the hospital room at that time. You know, I'm 18.
Must have been so traumatic.
It really was. And then at the time I had a nurse, and granted, she wasn't the best nurse with her wording because as I was going through this, I laugh now because I just don't know how to. But she said, I guess we'll never get pregnant at a young age again, will we?
Dang.
So hearing that and just going through what I'm trying to process, because at the time when you're 18, you're still a child.
Not only that, it seemed like this was the hope that you had in life at this point.
And this is what I thought. Yeah. I thought, okay, maybe God is going to give me something that I've been wanting. And instead of realizing that it was him that I needed, I just thought, okay, God's, even though, you know, I shouldn't be pregnant at this age, I just thought, okay, God's giving me the second chance. God's going to help me.
Best understanding at the time.
So I lost her, and that put me into a deeper rage. I had a relationship. Every relationship I have been in has been physically abusive, has been emotionally abusive, verbally abusive. So that's how I dealt with life. Everything I did was anger. When I lost her, like I said, I got in a deep depression, and my drug use went from every day now. Now I was doing meth every day. Now I started stealing from my family because I needed to buy drugs.
Support the habit.
I needed to support the habit because the habit wasn't every other weekend. It was just that. I had friends that I knew from junior high that I ran into again, and they liked this lifestyle that I was living as well. So we would hang out all the time. You know, we would steal from their family. It was steal from my family. I would steal from anybody. It got so desperate at times, we would pick up receipts on the floor, and, you know, you can see what you bought. I would then go into Walmart and Target and steal what was on the receipt. and then go to another one and turn it in.
Return it for money.
Get some cash. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, when your body's desperate for something, the things that you do,
You'll figure out.
you'll
whatever.
figure it out.
Yeah.
So at this time, like I said, after that I was 18. I didn't graduate high school because of all the ditching I did, all the bad stuff I did. So I didn't graduate. I got my GED like some years later, but this is where it started. This, I guess, again, out of control was the meth. Was after this, and then I lost the cousin that I was really close with to cancer. I want to say not too long after I lost baby. So that was another hard blow. So my life was just really out of control. I was now hanging out with, for real, gang members. You know, when I was in high school, it was a little wannabes.
Right.
Now I was hanging out with, you know, I guess the big dogs you would call them in the street. You know, they would use me to set people up. They would use me at this time to take men into a hotel room, act like I was going to sleep with them so they can rob them or they can jump them from a different gang or, you know, something that they wanted to do. That's all I knew what I was good for. You know, being used for whatever because I didn't love myself.
Objectified.
Yeah. And again, the drugs got worse. I had a boyfriend at this time. It was really abusive. At this time, I moved out of my family's home because, of course, you know, I have younger brothers and sisters, and I just didn't want to be around them. My parents never kicked me out. They never said, get out of my home. But I just, even though I was sick in the head, I had some kind of conscience to know that I didn't want to bring this around my siblings.
Right.
So I left, and at this time, I was staying in hotels. And during this time, I had this boyfriend at the time, and we were staying in the hotel together. Sorry if I get emotional.
No, it's fine.
So he got himself in some serious trouble with some other people. And it was just me and him in the hotel. And I knew he had gotten himself into some serious trouble. And I went to take a shower, you know, just normal thing to do. So when I come out, there were 4 men in my room. And I thought maybe my boyfriend at the time knew who they were. But I got nervous and I was like, what are you guys doing? And they said, you know, well, so-and-so owes us money. He can't pay. So he let us in. And at this time, I thought, okay, that's it. Like, where am I going to run? It's a hotel. It's small. So, you know, they did what they did to me. I was raped. Not only, you know, raped, but with objects. I can't even tell you how long it lasted. They all took a turn. And when they left, honestly, I was just a bloody mess onto the bed. I thought like that was it. And instead of going to the cops, I just thought, well, this is what I deserve because this is what I'm around, you know? So after that, that's when every now and then I started shooting up meth. I never liked needles, but that was a real low point in my life. I never saw my boyfriend, I guess you would call him, after that. I heard he got into some trouble a couple months after that, but I never saw him. I honestly never shared his story until I got saved of what happened. So this was my life. I had a boyfriend again. I have 2 children. When I got pregnant at the age of 22, so all this happened before. So at 22, I got pregnant. And I was scared I was going to lose baby again, but I didn't. So I have a son. He's 16 now. And when I got pregnant, I stopped doing drugs. And I thought, okay, this is it. You know, he's my saving grace. He's going to make me better. I got pregnant 2 years later. I lived with their dad in an apartment. He did drugs too, but he wasn't as bad. You know, he wasn't involved in gangs. So we tried to play house, I guess. So we did that. I had a daughter 2 years later. At this time, I was still sober. I was clean. I was doing great. But because I never dealt with anything, it came back. So my son was 2.5. My daughter was a couple months. I mean, their dad had a violent relationship. And we got into a really big altercation. My 2-year-old saw, you know, him hitting me. And I remember him running from the hallway on top of his dad, screaming at him. And instead of me taking my kids and leaving, I left. when I tried to come back for my kids, I couldn't get them. And because there was no court order, you know, when I called the cops, he didn't have to give me my kids. So instead of fighting, because I'm a runner, I was a runner all my life. I ran from everything. I ran from pain. I ran from hurt. I just met some guy and started living in hotels again. So I didn't see my kids probably for a year.
Dang. They were young.
They were young. Probably for a year I didn't see them. And I was just, again, doing fighting, doing what I knew best, you know, using what I needed to use to get what I needed, helping to still continue to set people up. You know, I would break into my parents' house when they weren't home and take what I needed to take. I even got my mom's wedding ring and I pawned it, you know, just everything. So this is when my addiction got really bad. I started I was motel hopping, doing what I had to do, still doing drugs. The relationship I was in with this person as well, I ended up marrying him. I knew him for 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Got married to him. It was abusive, to say the least. Then he was on parole, so we got raided. He got put into jail. And instead of me going to find my kids like I should have, I got into another relationship. And it was worse this time. This relationship was really bad. I would see my kids here and there. You know, I was in jail for a couple of times during all this. So this last relationship, he would do a lot of drugs, like a lot of drugs. And it just became really abusive. I remember one time we lived out in Rancho and he was just high off his kite and he thought I said something I didn't say. So he had literally hung me over a balcony and was going to like drop. I mean, that was my life. That's all I knew. I knew men were just to hurt me. I knew men were just to abuse me. I knew, you know, my life was just my life. You know, my family didn't want anything to do with me, my extended family. And granted, and it wasn't because they hated me. Now I thought this because they hated me. Like, how can they do that? But looking the outside in, it was no good. I would have brought this around, you know, my family. But I always had a praying grandma. I always had a praying mama. I always had praying family, you know. But at the time, I didn't want it. So again, during this time, my addiction got bad. Even worse, like I would sleep in cars. I would motel hop. I would sleep with people. I never really slept, and it wasn't because of the drugs, because I just always felt unsafe. Now, this person I was talking to got himself caught up in some stuff as well. During this time, I got pregnant again with my third son. I wasn't going to keep him. I was messing around with a married man, and I found I was pregnant, and I didn't want to go knock on the door and be like, you know, to his wife and his family. So I actually went twice to have an abortion. I couldn't do it. And because I know that I have high risk pregnancies, and if I don't get, I have to get a cerclage in my cervix when I'm 3 months to hold the baby until I'm full term. Otherwise I have more miscarriages. So in my head, I just wasn't going to get that procedure and I'd have a miscarriage. And during my last pregnancy, I did drugs my entire pregnancy. So when I was about almost 5 months, I was having back pain. I thought I was having a miscarriage, but what had happened was I had an E. coli infection in my kidneys, probably from all the drugs I was doing. So at this time, they did a drug test. They found that I was dirty. So in the hospital system in West Covina shows, you know, that I came out dirty. So when I went home, I slept for a little bit, and then I continued to do drugs because now I wasn't losing him. I just said, okay, I'm going to give him up for adoption. Because nobody knew I was pregnant. My family didn't know. My friends didn't know. Nobody knew that I was pregnant because I was trying to hide a sin that I didn't want to tell nobody about. So I just thought, okay, well, I'm going to have a miscarriage. I didn't. I carried him full term, doing drugs the whole time. I never allowed myself to connect with him. I never went to the doctors once. I didn't know what I was having. So when I went into labor, I went back into the hospital where they did that first test on me. And I had my son, and I just asked them, please, I don't want to know if he's a boy or girl. I don't want to see the child. I'm going to give him up for adoption. But when I had him, the nurse like, it's a boy, and I could hear him crying. And I said, I can't see him. Like, you need to take him out. And they did. And at that time, like, I contacted a friend. I told her what had happened, where I was at. She came in to see me. And even though she was not a great person, she had the best words for me. She's like, Liz, if you can give this boy up, and when he comes and looks at you, finds you when he's 18, you could tell him why you did this, then go ahead. And I couldn't. So I said, okay. They brought him in. He actually looked like my daughter that I lost because they let me see when I lost my daughter when I was 18. And I didn't have a name for him. I didn't know what to name him. I don't read the Bible or nothing. So one of my friend's sons came in and he had a Uriah Faber shirt on, I guess a UFC fighter. And I was like, what does that say? He's like, Uriah. And I was like, all right, well, Uriah. I'm going to name him Uriah, you know. But now my doctor came in and said, okay, you know, you're in the system dirty. So we're going to test you and your child again. And we'll be back. And I was literally hitting the pipe when I went into labor. And I did it my whole pregnancy. So I knew, like, they're taking my kid. They came back several hours later with hospital staff, social services. And granted, I didn't know God, so I didn't understand what God was doing. But the doctors came in, they're like, we're so sorry. You know, you came out dirty, but your son's clean. And there's no way that can happen. If you're dirty, he's dirty.
Yeah.
I just thought, well, I lucked out, you know. So when I had him, and now I had to go home, tell my family, you know, surprise, I have a baby, which I did, and it was really hard. But my family was very accepting. Uriah was with me the whole time. Yes.
You didn't have the baby though. You had the. Did they take him away?
No, because when they did the drug test, I was dirty. He was clean. So they said that they messed up because there's no way that I can be dirty and he can be clean. So the hospital thought they did an error.
So they just let you.
They let me go. They thought that I was clean and they messed up. So they were like, we're sorry. We don't know what happened. We tested it twice. He keeps coming back clean. There's just no way that you can carry a child and you be dirty and he's completely clean. That can't happen. So they thought that they messed up on mine.
Okay. So you go home with the baby.
I go home with the baby. And during this time when I was still in the streets, Uriah was with me the whole time.
That's my boy's name, by the way.
Is it?
Yeah. I love that.
It's a good name, right?
Yeah.
I actually named him Uriah David and never even knew the story.
The connection.
Nope. Never knew it. Never knew it. But so he was with me the whole time during this. And I finally gave him to my parents. He turned a year in October. I think it was 2009. Yeah, 2009. He turned a year. And then after he turned a year, I gave him to my mom because the boyfriend I was with was getting caught up in some bad stuff. So they were looking to kill him. So because they were looking to kill him, they were looking to kill me.
Right.
So here I am hopping from house to house, friends.
So these people, I'm just real quick, all these guys, are they involved in gangs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were messing around with gang members.
That's all I was messing around with.
Okay.
Yeah. So I never had nowhere safe to sleep. I couldn't even shower because then I would start having, flashbacks. The lady that I was staying with at the time, my parents hated her because she was a big drug addict, which I understand. She went and found my dad and told my dad, they're trying to kill your daughter. You need to come get her. So my dad, my grandpa, my uncle went to the house I was at. And instead of being relieved to see my family, I was pissed. I was like, get out, get out. My dad was crying and pleading with me to please come home.
Dang.
That he had somewhere for me to go. Now that I think back of it, it kills me to see, how hurt he was. But at that time, I wasn't understanding that. It was pissing me off that he was crying. It was pissing me off that he cared, because men didn't care, so it would make me mad that he would be begging me to come home. And I didn't want to. And I was like, no, you need to leave. But then the friend talked to me. My dad's like, I have a place for you to go. It's a rehab center. I didn't want to do that. I never was ready to change. I was ready to die. And I said, okay, if I die from an OD, if I die because I'm getting killed, then I'm ready to take it. And that's how I was.
Did you kind of want it?
To die? I did. I wanted to die. And I think that's why I hung out with who I hung out with. Because I'm not a dumb girl.
Eventually it was going to take you.
I knew it was going to take me.
Yeah.
And I walked out on my kids. I walked out on Uriah. I did a lot of hurtful things to my family. A lot of hurtful things were done to me. I was just done. And I was like, if this is what life is, then I don't want to live no more. But I could never kill myself. I never had that thought to kill myself. But instead I was like, well, I'll do drugs. I would do drugs. Sometimes my whole body would be numb. And I'd be like, okay, I'm going to die then. I'm going to have an OD. Something's going to happen. But nothing ever happened. We would get shot at and I would have bullet holes through my clothes and never get hit. Jeez. And again, I never understood that was God. I just thought, well, my luck, I don't die. That's how my mind was. What is it going to take? So, like I said, my dad begged me, and I really wanted somewhere to sleep safe. So I said, fine, I'm going to go. So my dad had called Victory Outreach. It's a Christian-based rehab center. It was out in San Bernardino. He took me there. As he's taking me there, I'm talking to the director on the phone, and she's like, it's a 1-year commitment. I'm spazzing out. You can't smoke here. It's a dress code. I mean, all this stuff. And I'm like, forget it. Like, I don't want to do this, you know? But I went with the thought that I just want somewhere safe to sleep. So I went.
You were tired.
I was tired. And I just wanted to sleep. I wanted to be safe. So my dad, my grandpa, my uncle drove me, dropped me off. They couldn't stay. Walked in. I probably slept for about 2.5 weeks straight, coming off of everything that I was coming off of. I remember they would just shake me and try to get me to eat, and I wouldn't. So after that, I got up, and now there was a routine. Now there was a structure that they were implementing. You know, you get up at this time, you pray, you have devotion. Again, I didn't have a relationship with God. So when they started telling me that, I was like, what do you mean? So I was in their home for 3 months, fighting with the leaders, fist fighting with other women because I was so angry. And yet they don't let you just call anybody. So if I wanted to leave, I had to call my dad. My dad was not going to come pick me up.
Yeah.
And where I was at, there was like 20 miles away from a freeway. Coyotes came out at night. God knew what he was doing. God knew what he was doing.
You were stuck there.
I was stuck because I'm a runner. And I packed my bags like 10 times. But I knew they don't let you just call whoever, you know, because they got to protect other people that are in the home as well.
Yeah.
So they're like, fine, call your dad. And I was like, oh, it would make me so mad. Because I was like, he's not going to come. None of my family will come. So it was 3 months. I was always in trouble. I was always fighting. I wouldn't pray. I wouldn't read my word. I wouldn't be disrespectful, but I would just sit there and never share. I didn't cry. I probably didn't cry for 6 years before this. I never shed a tear after that anymore.
Wow.
I was done. And I said, and this is the first time somebody just told me, you need to cry out to God. And to me, a man that I had, besides my father, he loved me, he was good to me. But other men in my life always hurt me. So I always thought, how am I going to trust somebody I can't even see? How do you want me to do this? So I went into a room.
Did you still believe in God?
No. I believed in him, yes.
Okay.
But I just felt I'm going to hell, like no big deal. That was my mindset. So I was in the room. And I grabbed the Bible. I didn't have one, so they had extra Bibles there. I grabbed it and totally joking around. I said, all right, okay, God, I remember my words. I said, let's see who you are. I said, if you don't do something, I'm leaving. And I'll walk, and I'm done. If you are who everybody said, because I would see the women and they're crying. I would see them praying. And I'd be like, that's so fake. That's so fake. Fake. Like, this is an act. This is stupid. I was like, no, nobody can do that. How can they feel you? I would hear people say, I feel the Holy Spirit. I feel God. I feel something. And I'm like, stupid. Like, honestly, I thought this is such a bunch of crap. That's my first words. So I looked up in the sky. I had a Bible, and I did, I guess, what you do, a Bible roulette. And I said, I'm going to open up this book.
I like that. Bible roulette. Pull that trigger.
Right? Hey, one trigger is going to be pulled. But I said, okay, do something then. You better speak to me right now. I'm done. And if I get killed, I'm good. I opened up his word, and I was totally mocking him and being sarcastic when I was saying what I was saying. And I went to Psalms 40, 1-3. And God, I never read the Bible in my life, okay? But it said I waited patiently for the Lord, and he heard my cry. He took me out of the dirt and the clay and the mire, and he put me on a firm place to stand. And it goes on. But I said I always waited for something. And at that moment, I felt him. At that moment, I felt...
He spoke right to you.
He spoke. And I said, I've always waited for something to take me out of this dirt. And I thought it was going to be death. I just thought death is what's going to take me out of this. And I said, I always waited for something to take me. And it's been you. You're the one that's going to take me. And that's the first time I cried in a long time. And I said, okay, God. And that's when I promised him, I've done everything else. I'm going to do this. I'm going to give you a try. I would start reading. I would start praying. I would start feeling things. You know, God took my addiction like this. But now I had to deal with memories. To come back. Yes.
How did you feel when you're crying out, you know, you're testing them, you're doing the Bible roulette, and you open to this verse and it's saying, cry out to me, you know, and you're crying out. Like, what went through your head?
I just thought, like,
what'd you feel?
I honestly felt a warmth, and I felt he's always been there. And I felt him say, I've never left. You're breathing because of me. So again, now I had to deal with the things I had to heal. And I was learning that. And the women in the home were great. I was in the home for 10 months. Came out. At this time, I was getting visits from my kids. I was seeing all my kids. They would come visit me every weekend. We were healing.
Who had your other two kids?
Their dad.
So
Their
he
dad.
still had them.
And he would let my mom take them and bring them, So we started healing. I came out of the home after 10 months. I spent my 30th birthday in the home, and that was the first birthday since I was probably 15 that I was sober off of anything.
15 years.
And that was the best birthday of my life, to be honest. Like, that was the best birthday of my life. I turned 30 in the home. I came out after 10 months, and I still was being plugged into church. But now here was the real test, because I was in a home, and I was secluded and I was protected. Now I'm being thrown back into the world. And at this time, I've given God everything, my hurt, my pain. During this time, I remembered why I hated myself at 13. So I would always pray and ask God to reveal certain things to me, like I didn't understand. And so I had memories, flashbacks of being molested when I was younger by that one uncle that I always felt uncomfortable around. So then a lot of things made sense to me. But the anger, the rage, everything. So I started healing from everything. And then me and the kids were doing good. After that, we're still going to Victory Outreach, but my brother Tommy started going to Freedom House. My kids liked Victory Outreach, but they're kids, so they'd be like, "Oh God, why do we gotta go to church?" And I'd be like, "This is what we need." So we went to Freedom House, and during this time, I got a job, like a for real job. I wasn't robbing nobody no more. I got a job. I was going to court to get my older ones back more. I got a car the right way. During all this, but I still didn't deal with certain things in the home, so God was still working on me. So when my brother invited us to Freedom House, they did like a Christmas thing for snow. My kids fell in love with the church before I did, to be honest. They loved it, and I was like, I can't leave Victory Outreach. That's what saved me. That's what got me better. Like, I can't do that. But then that's when God spoke to me. He said, "That was your season. It's over. Now I need you to come here." Being at Freedom House has helped us grow. Me and my kids have healed. I have my two older ones every other week. Me and their dad have a great cordial relationship. He even comes to Freedom House on Sundays. We co-parent well. Through all this, God has done a lot in me. God has healed me. God has removed the anger. God has removed the hurt. I don't have nightmares no more. I'm able to. God has always told me, you need to start showing your scars. And through these scars, you need to point people to me. Because I was ashamed of my testimony. But God had to tell me, this is why I protected you while you were doing what you were doing. Because I'm going to use you to reach other people that need to know who I am. Because he told me I can't reach them all. People need to understand that they have the same scars that you do. Because a lot of people don't want to hear things from people that don't know, have never been there.
Yeah.
He's like, and you have a lot. And so I direct prayer partners at my church. I actually do an Addiction Connect group at my church every Monday. And through this Addiction Connect group, it's for anybody who's been addicted, those that are still addicted, and family members of addicts. And this has been one of the most, God finally released me to tell me I was ready to do this. And through this has been so much healing. Through this, not for me, I mean, God gets all the glory, but through this, people aren't ashamed to be like, my husband's going through this. What do I do? Can you pray for me? Can you come to my house? Can we pray for my house? Can we fast? This has been really good, but God was the one thing that I was filling my body with everything to fill a void, to find love, everything. And everything I even did, even the love I had for my kids, could never fill what God filled. And God took away the dirtiness I felt. God took away my shame. God took away the unworthiness. God took away everything. And he left me with scars. And I always would be like, you'd hear the thorn in my side and I'd be like, God, why do I have that still? Why do I go? And he had to tell me it's because I need you to never forget where you came from. Because I don't want you to get comfortable and think this is what you did.
Yeah.
This is what I did.
And I think what's significant about you saying scars, because what it's a scar, it's a wound that is healed up, but it leaves a mark.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is all these things that happened to you were marks, they were cuts, they were all these wounds that you had, but they're now healed.
They're healed, yeah. No more Band-Aids over them.
Yeah, but there's there's something there that reminds you of the work that he did.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was a good, kind of a good analogy of what
it was. Yeah. And that's what he just always told me. Like, you just gotta show them. Like I said, my kids are involved. They serve. They're in usher. They're in media. They're in photography. We're planted. You know, I've been clean. It'll be 9 years in December. I've been single this long because I told God, you know, I'm yours until you release me. I'm yours. And whatever God asked me to do, no matter what my flesh feels like, I do. And it's not because I owe him. I do owe him. Yeah. But it's because I know again where I was and who brought me out of it. It was nobody but him. And that was huge to me, because the one person that I hated, the one person that I would curse, the one person I would damn, that I would, you know, just be mad at and scream at, is the one that loved me through my darkest, the one that had his hand upon me, the one that, even though I went through what I went through, it was because of what I was around. You know what I mean? It's not like God put me in that situation. It was just a road I walked on. But even though I went through all that pain, God kept his hand on me. Yeah. And I never realized, even with my son being clean, like my son, there's nothing wrong. You would never even know. Yeah. I mean, it is. And now that I look back, I'm like, man, God, you had your hand over me and my children this entire time when I hated you.
That is so good.
And that's why I remember, I hated you, but you loved me. That's why I love in Romans, at your darkest, you know, I loved you at your darkest.
While we were still sinners, God loved us.
Yes. Yeah. And I didn't have anything for him, not 1 ounce of love. I had hate, and he loved me through it all and protected me and kept me alive. And through this, I've grown. I'm a good mom now. You know, I'm a good woman. Like, I would never look at anybody want to hurt them anymore. I look at men not as no good. You know, I look at men as they're just as attacked as we are at times, you know. I can be around men and not feel scared. Right. I have strong friendships. I don't talk to anybody from my past anymore. God said I'm not.
You have to separate that.
He said you're done, and you're done. Because I thought, I can go back now in my mind and save people. And God had really basically very clear, because I don't get many clear words from God. Sometimes I'll get like little, it was like a no. No, you're not. And I don't go back. I don't go back to those certain areas. I stay away. I pray for those that I remember. I pray for those that are around us. You know, I don't go looking for anybody. God specifically told me, you're to stay away from this. And I do. And like I said, you know, my kids are great. They're good. And my oldest is 16. And I know what I was doing at 16. And he's not doing that. And I know it's because I'm obedient to God. And I built his house. He builds mine. And I don't care if I struggle the rest of my life. I see my kids. And my 16-year-old is at AP, honor classes. He, you know, plays the guitar. He's not out there having sex. He's not doing drugs. He's not, you know, abusing women. What I always known at that age. And I look and I'm like, man, God, I don't even deserve that. Like, I don't deserve anything you give me. And I see my kids. You know, my daughter goes through some things. But at the end of the day, like, I look at my kids, I step back. And I'm like, you know what, God? I will do whatever I have to do to know that they will never. I'm breaking these generational strongholds.
Amen.
I'm breaking them, and I see it, and I'm just always thankful to God, because, like I said, without him, I wouldn't be here. But more importantly, he still blesses me. Amen. And blesses my children. And at the end of the day, we don't deserve it.
No, it's just his grace.
It's his grace. It's his love. And my kids know my story. My older ones do. I've shared with them prior 2 years ago everything, just so they could understand, because I never did drugs around them. They never saw that. They just didn't know, why was mama gone? Why did mama leave? So I shared with them, and I told them, I want you to understand who God is. This is why I say God's important. Read your word, pray to him, worship. This is why, because if this wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here. You would be visiting me at a gravesite, angry, bitter. My daughter would, you know, my son would be, who knows what any of my kids would be doing. Yeah. So I look at that, and honestly, like I said, God, we just think God's a God sometimes that chastises us, that's mean to us. But he's not, because that's what I thought. He's just punishing me. But he didn't punish me. You know, God's love. God's love. God's everything that we're looking for, like I said. And I pray that everybody that's going through something will just honestly cry out to him. Because honestly, when I cried out, it was just totally mocking him. And
but yet he still answered with love.
Answered with love.
As you were mocking him.
With mercy. And I now know what love is. And love is not abuse. Love is not, you know, hurting myself. Love is not looking the way I do at myself. Love is, no matter what you go through, I'm here. That I'm gonna hold you. I'm gonna guide you. You know what I mean? He guides me. He picks me up when I stumble. He dusts me off. You know. I'm just really thankful to God for everything.
Yeah, it's so good.
I'm speechless. How's your dad now? Does he?
My dad's really good. He's involved in church as well.
Oh, good.
When I was in the home, my dad is always my support. He would go every Sunday to Victory Outreach with me and sit in the services with me. My dad never turned his back on me. And I have a brother that's involved in church now. My sister's in church.
Did your transformation help them believe more?
Because
I mean, they were going to church, but you're saying it's more ritual, because that's I think for Catholicism. I mean, not to say that people don't have a relationship with God, but I think a lot of it's ritual. Or more religion. You know, this is what we do because this is our religion, whatever. But maybe to see what he did in your life, saving you.
I think that's what
what
helped him.
I was thinking about your dad this whole time.
Yeah, no, he's good. He serves.
Because I have 2 little girls, you know, and I'm just thinking I can't even imagine seeing one of my little girls go through that.
Yeah.
But
you know what? My dad was always an extension of God's love to me, and I never saw it. Because the way my dad loved me,
he never gave up on you.
He never gave up. He always chased after me.
And that's what I was.
Never. And I look back at that, I'm like, man, God, you were trying to show me a little bit of who you were through my dad, and I didn't even see it. But he's doing great. He serves at church. He's faithful. He's such he's good. My mom never turned her back on me either. Me and my mom just had a bad relationship. You know, she was young when she had me, but we're good now too. Yeah. But like I said, I think it's hard to believe in Jesus and God, but when you see where I come from, where I've came from, you know that's only one person.
Well, you were on the other end. I think I bring it up sometimes about it can be hard to know God and believe and have faith in the unseen. Yeah. But when you see the work that he does, you know, through the Holy Spirit and the possibilities and the capabilities of him, it's like, how could you not believe? Yeah. You know, and especially for someone that lived it, you have no choice but to believe.
Because that's the only way to explain it.
Yeah.
Like where the turning and the transformation. And then not only that, like the restoration with your kids, like that's a miracle in itself that you're able to have a relationship with them to this day. And so people listening, I mean, everyone's got to make up their own mind.
Yes.
And they're going to hear this story. And if they're seekers or not believers, I mean, you're just telling your story, a testament of like God just fully loving you. Yeah. And with that, he can love anybody. And he has grace for everyone.
Yes, he does.
And I just, you know, I know you're in ministry now and you're trying to reach out to people that kind of gone through what you've gone through or, you know, or in that life. Do it because to hear your story and to know, I mean, because if you don't hear about it, you don't even realize it's out there. Yeah. You know, and hearing your story, it breaks my heart. Like my heart's broken for you. Like I mean, I know you're healed now, but just to know, even to sit with you and to know that you've gone through these things, it hurts. That hurts. That sucks to think of a little girl that was lost and felt hated or felt worthless. Like, gosh, Lee, because you know the truth. That wasn't true ever.
No, it wasn't. At any point. It wasn't ever true.
But to think that there's people out there that are feeling worthless, that feeling that they have no purpose here in this world.
What would you say to someone that maybe is feeling that now?
I would say that's false. That's a lie. That you are worthy. That God's word says you are far more precious than rubies. That you are loved, that no matter what's being done to you or what's been done to you, or what you've done to yourself or others, like it's never too late. Like God does not look at you as unclean, unworthy. He doesn't look at you like, oh, how can I even ever want to touch you? Like it hurts him to know that you're hurting.
Yeah.
It breaks his heart. And all he's doing is waiting for us to turn around and say, you know, God help me. That's all you got to say. God help me. Yeah. And he'll help you and he'll show you things and he'll put people in your life. Like I don't want anybody to ever think they have to take their life or want to die, because that's the worst feeling, because that's not God. Yeah. That's lies. That's the enemy. God wants everybody, you know, he's waiting for you. Like he's waiting for you just to cry out. And that's what I did. I cried out mocking him and he was there.
Yeah.
And he answered anyways.
He did.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being here and sharing, being so transparent and open. We appreciate it. And
thank you for having me. Seriously, appreciate it.
For shining a light on how great God is.
Amen.
With that, I just ask that you open your eyes, listen closely, soften your heart, and ask God to reveal himself to you.